Thank you, Elizabeth. So the real question for tonight, we all know who's holding Joel Klein accountable. The question is, who's holding Gotham accountable? That's what I want to know. So first, let me thank you, your entire team, for the work you're doing. Like you said, not everything on this blog I agree with. In fact, I asked my staff today to just give me a few lines about some of the most recent postings that I could comment on. And they said, forget about it, it's the holiday season, so I'm not going to do that. But kidding aside, I think with the work you're doing, the ability to give people voice, and the ability for people to disagree, to argue, to learn from each other is enormously powerful. In many ways, much more powerful than the daily fare or the daily newspaper. And so in that respect, what you've done is, I think, made the process better, richer. I've learned from it. There are lots of things on that blog that I agree with, lots I disagree with. Some of the things I disagree with, I've learned from and changed as a result of. And so I'm enormously grateful for it. Those of you who have good things to say about the school system, and there are a few of you out there, it's okay for you guys to blog too. There's no rule against the positives blogging, right? So, but normally, it's amazing. About once a week, I get a letter from somebody that says, I know when something goes well, nobody writes you. And when something goes poorly, everyone writes you. So I just want you to know that my kid had this great experience, and so forth, and so on. And those people, I believe, truly will go to heaven someday. So it's a very nice thing to have happen to you. So let me just say a couple of things. Elizabeth said, talk about my plans for the next 4 years, right? So I've given you a lot of grist for your blog, and I don't see why at a Christmas party or a Hanukkah party I ought to give you more grist. But I do think there are a couple of key things that are really powerful and important and that we have to look at seriously. Some of them were outlined in the mayor's speech last week, right before Thanksgiving in Washington, D.C., in terms of the way we think about and reward excellence in teaching. Everybody knows two fundamental facts. The most important thing in student outcomes is the quality of the teacher. And as to that most important thing, there's massive maldistribution in America. There's nobody I know who 55 years rather, after Brown versus Board, remotely thinks that a kid in every zip code, a kid from every family gets an equal educational opportunity. Because the most powerful part of that equation is teacher quality, and it's massively maldistributed in America. If we've done one thing in the last several years, is to really work on that, change that, attract more talent, and to the extent we can, incentivize it to go particularly to high needs communities. There's something really wrong when you pay math teachers the same as everything else, and then you're short math teachers. And when you're short math teachers in your high needs, high poverty communities. And those kids, to be blunt, can't afford to be short math teachers. And so we've got to fix that. We've got to understand that professionalizing teaching is the single most important thing that we can do. Al Shanker understood that. His Pew Forum speech in the 90s is something that I could have given today, indeed have given in many formats. If we don't professionalize teaching, reward excellence, incentivize the things and the outcomes we need, then we're not going to complete the mission. Second thing we've got to do is be innovative. You know, those of you who are in the tech space or in online communications, you know, you're thinking at a very different pace. Think about this. If you were to fall asleep 100 years ago and woke up today, in no field but education, would it look the same? Be one classroom, 25 kids, and we'd be arguing about is that too few or too many or whatever. But that was the basic model then. It was a basic model when I went to school. It's a basic model today. And we don't know how to use technology intelligently to transform the mission. In New York City, we've now got 6 or 7 truly innovative, differentiated schools, things like the School of One, things like what Katie Salen did with Quest to Learn. We've got charters that are doing very different things, paying teachers entirely different ways. We've got Generation School, which is extended the day, extended the year under the traditional contract. And in the next several years, you will see more innovation building on that innovation. And I promise you, just like I once promised that we would become the Silicon Valley for great charters, which we have become, we will become the Silicon Valley for real innovation in education. And over the next several years, even as we manage some very tough economic situations, we are going to focus on innovation. This year, for the first time ever, Time Magazine selected an education program as one of the 50 best inventions of the year. That was our School of One, which is really becoming a transformative instructional model where actually the student and his or her pace at learning becomes critical, instead of the classroom and the teacher trying to teach to the middle of 25 kids and figure out how you teach in the middle so you don't lose the people on the left and the people on the right. All of that, I think, can be done. Clay Christensen's book on this is terrific. John Chubb and Terry Moe's book on this is terrific. And I think if we focus on professionalizing teachers and bringing real innovation to the instructional mission, we'll change the world. Let me just say, in ending again, I want to thank all of you for being here. I wish you a very, very happy holiday season. Urge you to continue to blog, make your opinions known, continue to discuss and learn from each other. And I used to speak a lot about how being chancellor, you know, Elizabeth was kind enough to say I've been here for almost 8 years now. And there are a lot of bets I won. A lot of people said you'd be gone in 2 like everybody else, then 4, and then of course nobody anticipated that the mayor would run for a 3rd term. So I've been here a long time, and like Mark Twain, reports of my demise, I'm glad to say, have been premature. That doesn't mean the wish hasn't been there, but the reports are premature. But I often say, partially because of the life I've lived and the fact that I grew up in public housing and education transformed my life, I think a lot about what my life would have been if I had gotten an education commensurate with my family's income. But because of great teachers in Astoria, I was fortunate to end up living an entirely different life. So it's deep in my DNA, and I'm very passionate about it. And I say I consider myself the luckiest person in the world, because every morning when I get up, I know my assignment is to go fight for kids, particularly for poor kids, for voiceless kids, for kids who, if education doesn't work, those kids are going nowhere. And I consider that living out my dreams, my fantasies, and my passions. And then I used to say, but of course, then I read the newspapers. And now it's much better, because whenever things seem great and everybody you tweet is happy and I'm saying it's really working, I don't have to wait for the newspaper. I can go on Gotham and actually have a downer experience immediately. So Theodore Roosevelt used to talk about it in the arena speech, you know, about how it matters. And I believe it matters, and knowing the highs and the lows. But what Theodore Roosevelt didn't know is now you can have the highs and the lows instantaneously. Thank you all. Have a very, very happy holiday.